Hey y'all, Melissa here with you today, and today's project is this grandpa style cardigan I'm wearing. This is a hack of my Sora sweater, which is a pattern available in my shop. I've got the link to this below, and this is what the original pattern looks like. So as you can see, there are no buttons, no pockets, but it does have this cool kind of shaping gusset on the side and a high-low hem. What I'm going to show you how I changed on this is I added a bottom band and I took out that high-low curve, and then I added patch pockets and buttons. So check out that pattern link below, and then I'm going to show you how I modified it to make this look. Let's talk about how I hacked the pattern pieces. So I've got 3 of them shown here, and let me show you what I did. First is the cuff for the long sleeve pieces. This is what I used to make the pocket on my sweater, and all I did was rotate it so this was the direction of stretch perpendicular to the indicated stretch line, and then that's going to end up getting sewn on down here. So I cut 2 extras of these, and I'm not going to go through the whole patch pocket process because I have another video linked below that shows you exactly how to sew on patch pockets. So I just followed that same process using this pattern piece. Next, I eliminated this gusset seam. So in order to do that, I actually just want to place my gusset and my front piece right sides together, and then we're going to tape these, and then I'm going to fold this back, let me use a ruler to help, along the seam line. So this is as if I had sewed the gusset to the pattern, and then I'm going to fold it in half. And I'm going to cut off the extra half of the gusset, and I'll use this other half of the gusset on the back piece of the pattern. So here is what my front pattern piece looked like. And so you can see that I just took that piece of gusset that would have been sewn in there, and I went ahead and added it to the pattern piece. Then, going perpendicular from center front, I drew a line where I aligned with the highest point of the gusset, and that is where I cropped my sweater piece to add the band on the bottom. And then you'll need to measure this portion on your actual sweater because that is the amount that we're going to be using for the bottom band. So your sweater will end up being the same length in the front, and that means we don't have to alter the collar band piece, but it will be a little bit longer on the side instead of having that curve where the gusset normally would curve up for shaping. So I did this to the front, and then I used the other half of the gusset to do the same thing to the back pattern piece. So I just have one continuous side seam and I don't have that inset gusset. And then I cut 2 fronts, 1 back on the fold, etc. Everything the same as the rest of the pattern indicates. To create the bottom band pattern piece, you can either do this once you have the sweater sewn to that point, or you can do this at the beginning by measuring the pattern pieces. So here's my front pattern piece and my back pattern piece. This is sewn together, but if you were doing this with your paper pattern pieces, you would want to mark off and not measure in those side seams. Then you want to get a measurement for how far it is across the bottom there. So I've got 17 3/4 inches. And you want to remember how much you took off of the pattern when you modified it here, so how deep this was. Now in my case, it was 3.5 inches on the sweater that I made. So what you want to do is you want to take 3.5 inches, you want to double it, so 3.5 times 2 equals 7, and then you want to add 1 inch. So I'm going to mark off 8 inches here, and that is actually just about the width of this paper that I'm holding. So we'll go to here. Then for the length, it was 17 3/4, and that was half the width of my sweater. So I'm going to want to cut this on the fold, and I want to make this 17 3/4 inches. Now, I don't have 17 3/4 inches on my piece of paper, so I'm just going to make myself a note to continue this to 17 3/4 inches. But I want to multiply that times 0.9. When I multiply 17.75, which is the same as 3/4, times 0.9, I get 15.975. We're gonna round that off to 16, and that is what I want to continue it to. So I want to go from the fold line. I'm going to use my ruler to measure that out 16 inches, and I want it to be as tall as this piece of paper, and that's how I would cut my pattern piece. So let me show you what that piece looks like once I cut it out. Okay, here is my pattern piece. I cut it on the fold. So if I open it out, you can see I've got a long piece, and this is going to be my bottom band. And you want the stretch to run long ways if your fabric only stretches one direction. As I mentioned previously, I'm not going to show you the whole process of sewing on the pockets, nor am I going to go over the whole sweater. This is pretty simple to sew, and there are picture instructions with the pattern that I used. What I am going to show you though is how I placed the pockets. So I followed the instructions to prepare the pocket the same way that I did in that patch pocket video that I linked below, except I did not fold the bottom edge. I just lined up the bottom edge with the raw edge of the front of the cardigan when I top stitched my pocket on. And I centered it on the front cardigan piece. And then I just top stitched down the two sides so that it is actually currently open on the top and on the bottom. This bottom seam will get taken care of when I add the band, which is what I'm going to do next. To add the band, I need to find the center back of my cardigan. So I'm just going to fold this in half to find the center back, and I'm going to mark it with a pin. Then I'm laying it right side up, and I'm going to add the band. Now, I am using a super sheer sweater knit, and I just felt like the band and the pockets and the collar all needed a little more stability. So I added some lightweight fusible interfacing to the wrong side of those pieces. And it does still stretch, but it is much more stable. I'm gonna fold the band in half as well, match that fold up to the center back seam. And then I'm going to match the edges of the band up with the front edges of my cardigan. And I'm going to stitch all along this edge to stitch those together. I'm going to do this on my serger, but you can do this on a sewing machine with a stretch stitch as well. Let me take you to the serger to show you this. As I am stitching, I am going to be stretching the band slightly so that it lays flat against the sweater. So here is my band stitched on across the bottom, and now I want to fold it to the wrong side so that it covers this seam. Now, could you fold it at first and just sew all of that together in one go? You absolutely could. But I prefer how this covers up the raw seam allowances inside this band. So what I am doing is folding the band over, just barely covering that seam allowance, and then I am adding a pin on the right side. I'm doing this in a few places, and then I will have to like stretch the band to match the sweater. The reason I am pinning this on the right side is because I am now going to go take this to the sewing machine, and I'm going to stitch it on the right side right at the bottom of this band. I am going to use my cover stitch machine to do this, but you can use any sewing machine that would have a stretch stitch. So you can do this with a zigzag, you can do this with a twin needle if you want that cover stitch kind of look. Here is what this looks like after I've top stitched the band, and you can see on the inside that all those seam allowances are hidden inside that band now. Again, I did this with a cover stitch machine, and you do not have to. You can use a twin needle, you can use any kind of stretch stitch that your regular sewing machine will do to secure that in place. And I've linked a video below with some different hemming stitches. All of those would work for this. Now all I have to do is finish out the neckband for this the same way as the pattern instructions say. And I'm not going to shoot a video for that because it is in the pattern, but if you're curious and you want to see kind of what it looks like, check out the robe video that I'm linking below, because that is pretty much the same type of collar and it's sewn on in the same way. All right, I've got the collar sewn on here now. That's what that looks like. And here is the band, and all of this is finished inside. And I'm not going to go over how to sew the buttonholes and the buttons because I have other videos linked below that show you how to do that. What I am wanting to show you is this little trick. Sweater knit can be very hard to mark. So I put some washi tape on my sweater collar band here and marked that for where I wanted the buttonholes to go. And that helped me line it up on the machine, and then I just peel it off now that I'm done. All right, y'all, here is my finished cardigan. And this light sweater knit is perfect for fall temperatures where I live.